when people ask me, I've traveled a lot, so when people ask me what's my favorite city, I always say Rio. And I've also been to a lot of conferences, and Web Summit has always been the best. It's just amazing to be at one of the best conferences in the best city. Um, and yeah, excited to be here. I will talk to you today about mobile. What is the state of mobile? What has changed? And what you should think of to grow on mobile. So, I was on the way to Rio. I stopped in Houston, and I was with my college friend, and we were at the restaurant and started looking how many mobile devices. There were kids on iPads. People look at their watches. People look at their phones. And it's just incredible to really think how different the world is from what it was when we met in college. And, mobile is no longer eating the world. It has eaten the world. And, I'm a nerd for graphs. So if you think of like the mobile device subscriptions per 100 people, it has grown so much. And Brazil is actually doing, you guys use so much on mobile, and it's almost like leapfrogging the desktop. In US alone, and in the world, we have over 100 per person. So what does that mean for you, right? Like, the mobile is there to stay, and what does that mean? It means that the customers are actually there, and if you can engage them properly on mobile, it's actually just the beginning. It's not the end. It's actually the beginning of a new opportunity for you and your users. So, 70% of digital time for users takes place in mobile, and more than 90% of that is actually spent in apps. So what does it mean for the users you actually acquire? If you can get users from mobile web inside an app, they are much, much more likely to convert to paid. They see more products, and they have a much, much higher lifetime value. So, if we think about the age of mobile today, it's actually the beginning of a new opportunity for you to take advantage and really engage with your users differently. But before I go into what you should do now, let's talk a little bit about what the old game was. Why do companies actually build mobile apps? Well, most of them do it to increase revenue, to get more users. I showed you the numbers. They convert better, but also to save costs. So if you think about, your bank, and you have users that now use a mobile device, and they ask their query instead of going to a bank, you have to hire less people. So apps help with both. And, but I think the hard thing when you think about mobile, there is a big difference in the mobile ecosystem and the web. The web is a democracy. Everyone can build a website. There's no one looking over your shoulder. Mobile is different. I like to compare it. If you're a Game of Thrones fan, you might recognize this map. But the platforms have a lot more power. Apple can decide that your app is not good enough, and they're going to take it off. No one can go and take your website down, but Apple can take your mobile app down. So, in this mobile ecosystem, it's actually not as friendly and not as easy as it used to be on the web. There's a lot more potential, but it's also harder. And users are actually thinking about it very differently. We say that privacy has become a big focus for users. And if you think about it, it is there. This is from a wall in San Francisco that I drive by, and it was there for over a year, right? So if we see that privacy is king written on walls, that people think about it. And users expect good experiences on mobile. I think this idea that you get an email and you click on it and you have an app, but you're taken to a mobile website, that's no longer something that you can actually, users are okay with. So when you think about it, you need to actually make your mobile experiences a lot better. And it used to be that, when mobile introduced, the most important thing was getting the download. People are buying a lot of downloads, and that's all they measured. How much this campaign, how many downloads did it get me? And it really was this idea of third-party growth. You'd be like, oh, I have an app. Let me raise some money and go and buy a bunch of ads from Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. And that's no longer the game, right? Like right now, on average, every user has 90 apps on their phone. I went and counted mine. I have 162. So just by someone getting me to download their app, it doesn't mean I'll engage with it. It doesn't mean I'll go back. So you have to integrate these apps in the experience. And there's also imposters among us, right? There's a lot of fraud. And a side note, this game during COVID became really big. I used to play it with my team. And I was curious what happened. And I still have about 40 million monthly active users. If you haven't tried it, it's a really fun team-building game called Among Us. But going back to this idea of the imposters and the leaky bucket, when you acquire and you think about just the install, if those people don't engage it and don't come back, you are actually spending money that doesn't actually turn into ROI. So the game is really changing. And in addition to that, the market has changed. We're going through an economic downturn, but also the ATT changes and the privacy changes have really shifted the way people spend. So budgets are shrinking, and that means that when you acquire users, you can no longer just take them to the app. You actually have to make sure that they convert and they do the actions that you want them to do. And data used to be an asset, but with privacy, data can also be a liability if you don't use it properly. If you send it to third parties, if you buy third-party data, you have to be a lot more careful in how you measure as well. Okay, so that was the old game. What's the new game? The new game is really this idea of first-party growth and actually using your own channels, different places, to get your users to the right place in the app. The interesting thing here is that actually, first-party growth has always done better. This is an analysis we did with French customers, and we looked at, click-to-purchase rate depending on where users came from in the app. We compared ads to email and banners and referrals, and ads don't do that well overall. So first-party, if we go back to this idea of first-party growth, it is actually extremely important, but it's not something new. People were doing that before. You were acquiring users directly to your website and your other channels. It's just in the app, people didn't do it that well because it was hard. It was hard to measure, hard to do, and there was this third-party buying app installs that was a lot easier to do. And that's changing. So before I go into some examples and things that you should do, let me go into what you should not do. Don't give up in advertising. I know I talked about, but when you think about advertising, think about it differently. Do cohort analysis. Understand what are the actual channels that gives you valuable users. Don't get distracted by short-term workarounds. So, the idea of fingerprinting, fingerprinting was going away, but people are trying to find a workaround around it and spending so much time on it instead of actually think about the long term. And with the ATT changes that Apple introduced, fingerprinting became a lot harder, and then it became impossible, right? So the people who thought about the future earlier were a step ahead. Don't play Russian roulette with rules and regulations. Even if something is not enforced, a good one is uninstall tracking. Apple doesn't want you to measure it. Some people go and do workaround, but Apple might enforce that, or you might have a PR problem. So don't go around that. Don't cede control to companies whose incentives are not aligned with yours, and those are the big platforms. How many of you have heard of this idea of content fortress? Okay, no one. Well, the idea of a content fortress is this: when Instagram or Facebook is actually getting you to do more and more in the platform, like buying something. So you spend ads on Instagram to get them to an Instagram store. So Instagram is getting you to pay money to engage even more the users in their platform instead of owning them. And that doesn't make sense. You want to own the user. And then don't be disingenuous for your users. I think about the relationship between you and a user the same as dating. And it's kind of like cheating on your user, right? So you do not want to do that. So where should you focus instead? Okay, here are the examples. One, go for investable growth. So knowing that users that come, um, really looking beyond, the install or even the purchase. We looked at an analysis based on when someone comes for, and we looked at 4-week in-app retention by acquisition channel. And you can see how different it is between something like smart banners on your website or referrals versus ads that has the lowest retention. Build growth loops into your product. I am obsessed with virality. If you're looking for a good book on it, Contagious by Jonah Berger does a really good job. And this is one really fun example. Robinhood is a stock purchasing app. And they do this thing when you invite someone, when they join the app, they get a free stock and you get a free stock. And it's an amazing viral loop because you don't know what the stock is going to be. You're curious. There's this idea, you get like kind of this fuzzy feeling if you get a really good stock. And then when your friend actually joins, it gives you back to the app and you have this reward, so you want to invite more friends. And so they drove a lot of their organic growth through this. The other one is we really update customers to better places. And web-to-web banners is one of the best ways to do that. We have a product, a branch that helps with that. So the secret here is to not just have a banner all the time for every user, but to actually go and show the right banner depending on where the user is in the journey, where they come from, and really optimizing it. And we actually saw that if you optimize those banners, you can get a 5x click-to-install ratio. Fix the leaky bucket. I mean, if you have users that come from a channel and you don't take them to the app, you take them to the website where they might drop off, that's a very, very easy fix. This is just one example of a company, Ancestry in US, that actually make sure that from email they take people to the right place inside the app, to the promotion that they had in the email, and it really increased app opens and it tripled the feature engager just by deep linking their emails. The last one, is really focusing on creative optimization, and this is one that it's going to become a lot easier. I think AI is changing the game. It's going to really help creatives be more engaging and really personalized to the user. This is just one example of Expedia, again, showing very different, get the app optimization on their main website, depending on who the persona was, right? So if they knew someone cared about money, they were cost conscious, they showed them a % off. If they were control freak, talked about that. So really, really personalized and show different banners and different QR codes to track which one's working. And then the last one is really this idea of embracing this new measurement reality. We are in a different world, and ads alone don't make sense. So when you use, don't just lose and look at your ads and measure your ads, but actually make sure you use a platform that actually goes through all the different channels. And we can talk if you're interested in learning more. So, to recap, mobile has eaten the world, but that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. It comes with a lot of opportunities to engage with customers differently and get them to engage with your brand and buy a lot more. The platforms can be dragons, but you can also use them to your advantage to get users to your place. And the third-party growth does have a leak with the changes that has happened. So first-party growth is extremely important and something that's not only good in the short term, but it's sustainable. You can get users that will stay with you for a much longer time. And this is the beginning of new opportunities. If you're using this, if you're building apps, if you're growing, you will be the winner. You are the winners, and you will be the winners in the market. And in the spirit of first-party growth, I have a QR code that's powered by Branch. So if you're interested in getting the slides or learning more about Branch and we can help with how we can help, leave us your contact, and I'll make sure you both get the slides, and we'll reach out to you. So thank you for listening to me, and I'm Mada, and I hope you guys have an amazing rest of Web Summit.